Hello, my name is Hamlet Dobbins, and this is Memphis Material, an oral history project chronicling the stories of the visual arts in Memphis, Tennessee. Memphis Material is a podcast celebrating the personal histories, the intimate stories, and the studio practices of some of the people who helped shape the creative landscape of our city. These unedited interviews are all recorded at the Memphis Listening Lab, a gem of an archive located in the majestic Crosstown Concourse in Midtown. The website for Memphis Material was designed by the wonderful Brian Dixon. Now, we don't really have sponsors per se, but if this interview had a sponsor, it would be sponsored by Changing Your Mind. I love being older, and I love knowing that when I was young, I thought things and that I was totally wrong about them. And I love changing my mind and realizing later that I was totally wrong. Now, today's interview is a little bit of a weird one. So, the sweet Jeanne Seagle came in and recorded an interview with me on August 8th, 2005. And something happened with the memory chip, and the recording cut off with about 30 minutes to spare, or 30 minutes that we kept going and did not realize that it had stopped recording. And Jeanne was a real champ. And when I let Jeanne know that we had lost that time, she said, no problem, just come over and we'll re-record it. So today, August 18th, I went over to her studio and re-recorded the interview. The audio obviously is going to be very different. It was recorded on my phone. It was also recorded in a house with fans and an air conditioning and construction going on across the street and demolition going on right behind Jeanne's studio. But we made the recording, and it is right there at the very end. Let's see. I think that's everything. Okay. Enjoy the interview.
Okay.
So let's see. So today is Friday, August 8th, 2025.
Yes.
We're here with Jeanne Seagle, part 2. Yep, there's you. Hang on.
Oh, sorry about that.
That's okay. My alarm goes off all the time too. I actually had to set an alarm to make sure that we're good so that we can stop.
Okay. That should do it.
Okay. All right, let's see. Let's do it again. Let's see. So today is Friday, August 8th. I'm here with Jeanne Seagle, part 2. So let's see. So Jeanne, I re-listened to the interview yesterday, and let's see, we got to where you and your partners in the sort of small design group, it was 3 of you, had gotten a place downtown on Union, and then you had sold it, and then you had gone off and done all this wonderful traveling. And I think where we left off was that you made it through Italy and you did not have to go to prison, which is really great. But now one thing that I noticed when I was listening back to it this morning or yesterday was I let something drop every once in a while when I listen to these, or when I'm doing these interviews, I'll just be like, I'll totally space out. So you were saying that you guys did illustrations for Stax Records.
Yes.
Anything of note, anything that you were super excited about that you did?
Well, my partners did all of the record albums for blues singers. And I got things, well, I remember I did an anthology of the history of music, stuff like that.
Okay.
Which was hanging up in their hallway of album covers, but the last time I was over there, they had taken it down, and I'm really sorry because there were some really beautiful album covers.
That's so interesting. I mean, that's one of my favorite parts of Stax is that hallway that you can walk through and see that. So you did this fantastic trip, which sounds amazing. I mean, if I remember right, it was about 3 months overseas.
Yes, exactly.
And so then you come back to Memphis, and what does it look like for you? What have you got going on?
Oh, well, I moved in with a friend in an apartment building over there on the northeast corner of Overton Park on Forest Avenue, which was a notorious street for art students and musicians, and it eventually turned into ne'er-do-wells too. But it was just a wonderful place to live. All these people that were students at the Art Academy lived over there. On one side of the street, we had visual artists on one side of the street, and we had musicians on the other side of the street. All these apartments had balconies, and we would get out on our balconies and, just have a whole lot of fun. We would have, while the musicians were playing music on one side of the street, the visual artists would be having, performance art kind of things, and I lived very happily there.
Now, do you remember some of the people who were living over in that area?
Oh, yes. Well, there was Karen Bottlecaps and Carol Robison, Jackie Ware, Jan Hankins. I think those are the artists that I remember. And then on the other side of this was like the class of 1983, something like that. That might be about your age, I guess, or is
Let's
that
see, I graduated
older?
from high school in 88.
Oh, okay. So
Yep,
this
yep.
is older than you. Just a whole lot of wonderful, creative people.
Now, would you do, I mean, most of the people, they had probably their studios and their apartments. Would you
Yes.
guys like go around and have visits and talk
Well,
and look?
Yeah, we would visit. Alex O'Neill lived next door to me, and he was just a wonderful artist who was teaching at the Art Academy, and he would do these incredible colored pencil drawings that were 4 or 5 feet large with colored pencils. He went on to go to New York, and he lives in New York now. But he also was somebody who would go travel around the world to artist residencies. He moved out, and a guy moved in who was a computer programmer, and he ended up going to Silicon Valley, and being a programmer really early on. He was very, all of these people were so eccentric too, including myself. Oh, I remember Marcia and Gail Clifton were there too.
Okay.
And they're still making music, and that's what they were doing back then. And
Now, I mean, one of the things I know about you is that, and that you mentioned last time, was there's this kind of like a gig that you have where you'll do these illustrations, but then there's also a big part of your life where you make things that are jeans that are on your own. And so around this time, like, what kind of things were you thinking about in the studio?
Yeah, well, it was a great time for me because I had money left over from the sale of my building downtown, so I had time to do my own things, and I illustrated a children's book during that time in collaboration with Steve Stern. It's called Mickey and the Golem, and I used the technique that I had discovered in Europe of going to a museum where the work of people who were incarcerated, who were either in jail or in mental institutions, and I just loved the artwork that I saw there. I don't know if I talked about that the last time. It was in Basel, I think, and people would just do this outrageous kind of artwork. They would just hold out their hands, and they would be divinely driven to to draw or paint. Like for instance, I remember seeing a drawing that was about, I don't know, maybe 15 or 20 feet long and 4 feet wide that a guy had just drawn with a ballpoint pen, you know, just stuff like that.
Right. Hang on, give me 1 second. I hear a little buzz. Let me see what I can do. Do you hear the buzz?
I didn't notice it until now, but I can hear a little something.
Okay. Now, just out of curiosity, thinking about that outsider art or the art of the untrained or however we're framing it, what was it about those images? Because I mean, when we see those kinds of things, for me, it's really powerful in that it's other. It's something that's outside of what I've been taught in terms of being good. For you, when you were looking at that, was there something about that you tapped into? Something about that was particularly interesting for you?
Oh, yes. Well, it was just the energy. It was just astounding. And I had spent the months before going to see classical Renaissance type work and also, work, the Impressionists and modern artists too. But nothing had this kind of energy. I could just imagine these people drawing, are barely sleeping to get these drawings out. It was just phenomenal. So I started drawing that way. I had been really good at drawing realistically as an illustrator for magazines. I had been an illustrator for the Baptist Brotherhood, drawing pictures for their magazines. And this stuff was, I just would hold out my hand and whatever came out that's what I would do. And I know the Baptist Brotherhood did not like this at all. They would not let me draw that way.
No, I mean, and again, just because we're sort of thinking about you having this multi-pronged creative life, you've got these things that you make that are sort of like commission and for hire, and then there are these things that we sort of think of as your own, but of course, like in an ideal world, they'll both sort of come from the same place. Yeah. Now, when you were talking about how the Brotherhood wasn't as crazy about those drawings, is that a thing for you that's pretty easy to shift gears and say, oh, okay, well that makes sense. They don't like those.
Yeah, it's not hard for me to do that. And even now, I go back and forth between photographic realism to loose, just loose painting. I seem to need to do both, to have the balance. Now, Memphis Magazine did print some of my illustrations, and they were pretty avant-garde. Nobody else was doing anything like that. So I used that same technique in drawing my children's book, Mickey and the Golem. It was, this very loose and abstracted type of drawing. And it, Steve Stern went on to be pretty successful. I don't know if you've heard of him. He moved to New York too, and he's had his picture on the cover of the New York Times book section. So, he's lived an interesting life away from here. And I learned from him a really important lesson about submitting my work and trying to get gigs and trying to get jobs. And that was wait until you have a stack of rejection slips about a foot high. Keep doing it. It might take that many rejection slips. That's a good lesson to learn.
For sure. And you were talking about working with him on the book. I mean, for me, I know a lot of my students are particularly interested in working with books or working in a narrative or in a story. How was that different than some of the other projects that you had taken on in the past?
Oh, well, the ones I'd taken on before that were pretty boring, really. They were commercial jobs for money, drawing pictures for ConAgra was one of my clients, and I would draw pictures of chicken parts.
Oh my God.
I think I probably drew 500 drawings of chicken parts.
Oh my gosh. No, but tell me about this, Mickey. Go ahead.
Oh, well, this might have been later that I got the chicken part job. That was with I got a job with an advertising agency, and I think that was a little bit later than this time that we're talking about. What I did. These children's books, which I'd always wanted to do and still love to do children's books, but they are so labor intensive and it's a labor of love. You can't make any money. You can't support yourself doing children's books. So my money ran out and I ended up getting a job at Rainbow Studio designing stained glass windows. That was lovely to do that.
Now, hang on, let me pause you just for a second. So you were talking about the illustrations and how you had always sort of wanted to do that. Were there books that when you were a kid that were particularly important for you?
Yes, I love children's books. And I was so lucky because my books were the ones that had belonged to my mother and to her older sister, who was 20 years older than she was. These were children's books from around the turn of 1900. Just beautiful illustrated books from that era. I wish I don't have them anymore. I wish I did. I don't know what happened to them. Probably in an attic someplace where I stored them,
Well, you were talking about this project with Steve.
Uh-huh.
It being sort of a time-intensive thing. And so what is it about that process that makes it so particularly time-intensive?
Well, I guess the biggest challenge in drawing a children's book is to make the character look like the same person from one page to another. And that's what's hardest for me. I didn't have a model. It would be a lot easier if you have a model and you take a lot of photographs. But this stuff was coming out of my imagination, and but I love doing it because there's the telling the story, doing the layout of one page to another, making it flow, the making, it's kind of a rhythm like music. It has, a single page illustration, within a double page spread, and making that kind of rhythm.
And it sounds like with that project you had more autonomy. You were sort of able to be more in charge.
Oh yeah, I was totally in charge. I designed the whole book. It's not nearly as fun to just draw illustrations. I've done that for some books before, and what I like is designing the book, designing the layout of the book, and I have done about 8 children's books, I guess. a little bit later on, I did one called Never Take Candy from Strangers. And this was a book teaching. This was back in a more innocent time, in the 80s, before uh, there was so much danger in the world and people were not as paranoid as they are now, but they were starting to be. And so this was just a little book that said, if somebody in a car stops and talks to you, don't get in the car with them. Right. Stuff like that. And that, that actually came in handy for me. There was one section that said, if you're walking through the park and somebody stops and wants to get out, and don't run into the forest, run where there are people. Well, that happened to me. I was in Overton Park, and some guy in a car stopped and started to come after me, and I ran into the forest. I thought, and then I remembered the children's book. I said, I can't be in the forest. I've got to. So I ran out into the golf course, and and the guy left, and wow. I continued on.
And so with the children's book that you did, where you had the autonomy, the Mickey and the Golem, I would imagine it's really difficult to find a kindred spirit to work on a project with. How did you and Steve get together?
Oh, well, he and I were friends.
Okay.
And this was a book that was published by Phyllis Tickle. Okay. Do you know who she is? She worked for she was a well-known writer and educator back in the, 30, 40 years ago, ever long ago this was. And she knew both of us and got us together. But Steve and I were personal friends. Okay. We hung out together anyway. Some of my later books, people would just be looking around for a book illustrator and somebody would recommend me, So I've done several in the last, I've done a couple of books in the 2000s that were, they are by teachers who are trying to teach kids, how to manage their emotions, or their practical books. But the one thing about children's books is they're expensive to print, and the people that are hiring me to do children's books don't have a whole lot of money, so everything's kind of on a shoestring. But my friend Peggy Turley was very successful she published a children's book called Armadillo Ray, which was bought by a big-time publisher in San Francisco. And this publisher ended up making her redraw every illustration, and also they would make her have a different angle. They wouldn't just accept this children's book that she did. They had to change everything about it, and that was so disappointing. It made it no fun. I mean, nobody wants to change their whole premise on their creation, and that's what she had to do. So I decided I would back off from children's books.
Now, I remember you had mentioned Peggy earlier. You were talking about how you had done some traveling with Peggy before.
Yeah.
Now, how did you two know each other?
Well, we were, when we were in our late 20s, I guess, a lot of people like we were downtown at that studio, and one of my friends was dating her, and we were just a great big group of, artistic kind of kids that rented space in this deserted downtown. Tav Falco was down there. Do you know who he is? And Lisa Kurtz had a gallery down on Front Street. It's all right around in that little neighborhood where the new Memphis Museum of Art is going. In fact, that's just right across the street from my studio. Man, if I had been able to hold on to my studio, wow,
So you were saying after you came back, you did some projects and then you started working at Rainbow Glass. I mean, that's sort of a storied institution. Talk to me a little bit about working at Rainbow Glass doing the stained glass design.
Well, it was so much. I loved it. I would, at that time, Rainbow Studio was on Cooper Avenue, right across from the Barksdale Cafe, in the little house that is now an eyeglass place. And I would walk through Overton Park, get there, design glass. It was really, really fun, but it was a pretty dysfunctional workplace, and I had been hired to be a office manager and designer, and then the office manager who had quit came back, and there were two office managers, but I remember we would fight over projects. Our boss, the owner, didn't tell us that what was going on, and so we would fight over our projects, and I kept being demoted until I was the manager of the scrapbook. So I figured, well, I better get another job.
Now, you were saying that you enjoyed designing the windows.
Oh, yeah.
Now, I mean, I would imagine...
So beautiful.
I mean, I would imagine that's a totally different set of tools. I mean, in some ways, it's probably very similar to composing an image, but I would also imagine that there's a lot of knowledge that you would have to have about stained glass. How was that learning curve for you?
Well, it was very challenging because not only do you have to consider the glass when there is sunlight shining through, but also when it's night and there's not any light shining through, and it changes colors during those two conditions, and also on the other side of the glass, if you're outside, the glass is a different color. So it had all of that to consider, as well as the different shapes that you could cut with glass. There are how just the physical construction would what's the word? I'm searching around.
Yeah, just to be possible.
Yeah,
to stand up structurally.
The weight and So it's a very complicated system, but it was just so rewarding because the glass is so incredibly beautiful,
And so you were saying after a while you realized you needed to do something else. What was the next thing for you?
Well, the next thing was I got a job at John Malmo Advertising.
Okay.
And this was, they were the leading advertising agency in town. They later merged with the Ward Archer and to become Archer Malmo. But at this time, they were, it was just John Malmo, and they were in old cotton warehouse down on Union Avenue, actually just right next door to where I had, worked earlier with the building that I owned. So it was fun to go back downtown and work there, and had total freedom there. I never saw Mr. Malmo. We were on a different floor, and it was I really didn't have any supervision. I would just sit in on meetings, brainstorming meetings where people would try to come up with advertisements, and then I would draw them. And this is where the main client was chicken, Conagra chicken. And I would do storyboards for commercials mostly. And, on certain days, it was just all about chicken. They would, they would be experimenting with chicken flavors. You could smell the chicken being cooked in the studio with different. And I'd be drawing away. I remember I had one advertisement. It was a commercial that said, "At Conagra Chicken, we wash our chickens 50 times," which, so I would draw chicken parts being washed 50 times, but that brings you to the idea of why did they have to be washed 50 times? They are just really kind of dirty little morsels.
No, I mean, for my frame of reference, I don't have a lot of frame of references for working in an ad agency, much less being an illustrator there for that. What was the atmosphere like? Was it like a big open space? Were you sort of in a little cubicle? What was it like?
Well, yes, it was a big open space with our cubicles, and it's in an old cotton warehouse building with brick walls. It was in big windows. It was very pleasant there.
And then what about the people that you were working around?
Well, we all liked each other. It was nice. It was a great workplace. I was kind of the low person on the totem pole, though. Everybody would have, done their part in this job, and I'd be the last one, and so I would end up having to stay up all night frequently to meet the deadline for these commercials, and that was really hard, to stay up all night at least one night a week, and it's just kind of common knowledge that people that work in advertising, they either quit or have a heart attack by age 40. So it's a business for young people, and I've noticed that a lot of people that worked for the ad agency, Kong Wee, just quit. It's about time for her to quit, or have a nervous breakdown.
Right. No, I mean, for me, there are parts of my job that are sort of got to get it done. There's a finite amount of time we need to have this done, and then there's sort of like a period of rest, and so there's a kind of adrenaline that goes along with that.
Oh, yeah.
Was that the way it was with you, or was it more just like, oh gosh, I'm going to be up all night?
Oh, no, there was a tremendous amount of adrenaline. I'd smoke endless cigarettes and drink coffee, and stay up all night, and would get it done, and and then the next day I'd collapse and sleep for a day. Then I'd get up and do it all over again. It was really, really hard, and also it kills your soul to be working, to be using your talent on stuff like this, purely to make money. And we were very well paid. You can make 2 or 3 times as much money for a drawing as you would for a fine art drawing. So I did that, but I liked to go traveling, and I would go drive out west every summer to see my relatives and just, to travel. And I ended up, quitting there, or, maybe they let me go because most companies don't want their employees to be gone for 2 months every year. And also, the computer came, and that was it. So many people that were employed by ad agencies were without a job. Not just me, a drawer, but also typesetters and photographers and copywriters. The art director could do everything on the computer. And that was a godsend because I was just ruining my health working there. But there I started to freelance after that, and that is just so wonderful for an artist to be able to freelance, and I did a lot of caricatures at parties, thousands.
All right, hang on. Before we get into that stuff, talk to me about these trips out west. I want to hear.
Oh.
I want to hear more about what you're doing out there and what you're seeing and thinking about.
Oh well, they were wonderful. This went on all through my 30s and into my 40s. My parents were originally from a town called Pueblo, Colorado, which is on the eastern slope of the Rockies, and that was always called home. And my father had this job as a forest ranger and was sent over here to Arkansas and Mississippi, but we would always go back to Colorado for the summer, and that was home. And after my parents died, I went back there on my own. I'd go see my elderly aunts. I had 3 elderly aunts that all lived to be 97, and I would go visit them. And in the daytime, I would just go out riding around by myself. It had always frustrated me because when I went out there with my parents, we would just sit around at my aunt's house. We might go up to Colorado Springs, but we never went anywhere. And I was just dying to find out what Colorado was all about. And I went out there maybe 5 or 6 years in a row and just drove around. And I would, I had a guardian angel with me, because when you are driving around out west, it's not like driving around on this side of the Mississippi River. Roads run out. You find yourself on an edge of a cliff. And that happened to me all the time. But I just loved doing that. And I still love to ride around and go exploring. I don't necessarily want to do it in a mountainous area, though.
No, I'm curious. To think about that. I mean, part of me is wondering, what was it that you did when you were there? I mean, of course, driving around is a kind of thing, but also I know that drawing is such an important part of your practice, and I'm curious about how you were working that into the travels.
Oh, well, yes, that's what I did. That's when I really started doing my fine art landscape stuff. It would be on these trips, and I would, I'd pull over to the side of the road and and paint watercolors, paintings. Or I'd take photographs and go back home and produce pictures in my studio. And I have a whole room in my house that's just all out west pictures.
Now, what do you think it is about that landscape? I mean, in the same way that, like, if you and I sit here and we say, like, oh, I love Bob Dylan, and then we're like, I love Bob Dylan too, and then what is it about Bob Dylan that you like? You know what I'm saying? And so, because we all come to the West with a different set of expectations and a different set of things that we like or that we're interested in. And so I'm curious, what is it when you think about that area of the country, which is so beautiful, what do you think it is about that area that is so beautiful? What is it that grabs you?
Well, I know that you can look in any direction and there is a great composition. There are so many different shapes and there are so many different colors, bright colors, really beautiful, colorful rocks, trees, the sky, the clouds, they're all so intense and brilliant. And here, it was when I quit going out to Colorado, and I'd go to California a lot too, and Utah. When I got back here, it was so challenging to find something to paint. We have two colors, green in the summer and gray in the winter, and it's flat for the most part. So it was very challenging to make that change. But I just had a wonderful time. I would be by myself, but I could just do plein air painting mostly, and I really was able to develop a good watercolor technique. And I also would make just small drawings with colored pencils too, and oil pastels. So those were my primary media. And it was a wonderful time in my life that I just really miss so much. The only fine art that I saw as a child were paintings that were in my elderly aunt's house. She had been a concert pianist she went away to the Chicago Conservatory of Music and came back to Pueblo, Colorado, where she played the piano for the movies, the silent movies.
Oh, wow.
And taught music lessons and gave one concert a year of music. And she hung out with, there was an artist, a painter, a German guy, and I have read that a lot of Germans would come to the United States, to just paint the scenery and take it back to show people in Europe what it looked like out west. And my grandmother was evidently acquainted with a guy like that. I have several paintings that he did of, this landscape that is in Pueblo, Colorado. And I'm planning they're my prized possessions. They were always hanging in my aunt's house over her. She had a baby grand piano, and these paintings were hanging over the piano, and I inherited them. And I want to take them back to Pueblo. There's a museum there that has most of his paintings in this little town. So I'm planning a road trip to go back to Pueblo and take these paintings with me and give them to this museum. So
now, when you're thinking about those paintings, I'm curious. One of the things I was kind of thinking about as you were talking about going out into that landscape was sort of how you were talking before about being influenced by the art that you were seeing in Basel of the people who had been institutionalized, and how that was a kind of an influence on you. And I know a big part of what is in our lives is finding our own voice, and sort of thinking about how is it that we make these images. What is it about these images that feels like they come from Jeanne, you know? But before we get to that spot, talk to me a little bit about those paintings that you were talking about before from the German. When you think about those paintings, what do you think about, what do you feel like they do that feel different than other paintings?
Well, he was living and painting in like the 1880s,
Okay.
and he, I just think that would have been just so wonderful to be a professional traveler who would go along with somebody with money and paint the pictures of the landscape as souvenirs for, you know, the wealthy traveler who would hire them. And I don't really know anything about this guy, except I do know he came from Germany. There are a lot of Germans that live in Colorado. It's similar terrain, you know, the mountains. And, so actually, he's not all that great a painter. But he painted, you know, you can recognize the landmarks that he painted just right on the edge of town, and looking over towards the mountains. And he painted, there's a river that goes through, it's an oasis, and there were some, he painted a picture of a sod house. You know, it's in the high desert. There weren't any trees, really. And so people made their houses out of sod. And so that's what he's painted. And I think that's just really interesting. You know, you can go to the edge of, the last time I was there, you could go to the edge of town and see that same kind of, you wouldn't see sod houses, but you'd see that same mountain landscape that he was painting. And I think it'll be interesting to go out there. I haven't been there for 20 years. I'm sure that, you know, the whole edge of town is probably a suburb now, you know. Probably that whole area from Denver to Colorado Springs and down to Pueblo is probably, you know, all built up with apartment buildings, although I don't know. I quit going out there when my aunts died, and in the about 1993 something they died, and I saw that a lot of California people were building extremely expensive houses in Colorado, and I had always kind of dreamed about going out there, but I could see that I would not be able to afford to, you know, that real estate. So,
Now, I like how you were talking about looking at those paintings and looking at those landscapes, and how there's a kind of timelessness to them. You know, like, you know, that landscape that he was looking at in 1880 is probably pretty similar to the kind of thing that you would see. And then also you were sort of talking about how when you're out there, no matter where you turn, you know, there's something dynamic, there's something amazing and super rich that's happening around you. What do you think, like, in terms of that landscape, what do you think it is that clicks for you? So, like, for example, for me, I am not a beach person. I'm not really a desert person. I want to be surrounded by those million shades of green. You know, I just want to be in the mountains, or in a place where there's a lot of green and a lot of lushness. For you, thinking about that landscape, what do you think it is about that landscape that clicks for you?
well, have you traveled out west much?
I love how you ask that. Like, there's no way you've been out there and you're not into it, Hamlet. You've got to be. You surely you haven't been out there. I've been out there. I do love it. I'm not saying like I would not want to hang out in Colorado because it is mad gorgeous. But talk to me a little bit about what do you think it is that clicks for your temperament or your sensibility.
Oh, gosh. Hmm. Well, there's just a particular feeling, and it's not just visual, it's also the feeling of the air and the smells. And, being at that higher altitude. And also, I just really love going to the top of mountains and then coming back down again. Um, and being, I remember on one particular trip, I was just on the very top of this mountain and looking out, and there was no sign of human life anywhere. It was just mountain after mountain after mountain. It was just so incredibly exhilarating. Uh, I guess that was. I guess that might answer your question.
Yeah, no, no, no.
I'm not sure, but also I love the, you never. There's just so much variety in the landscape. There might be a mountain, but then there also might be a canyon or a waterfalls or no telling what might appear.
No, you were talking about doing this long trip, over the course of many years. On the way out there, it would be a solo trip? You would just be by yourself to go and visit with your family?
Well, a lot of my trips are by myself. Now, sometimes I would have people with me. Uh, and I really love traveling out west with my husband, Fletcher. He moved to uh, San Francisco and lived for a while, and I had gone to Los Angeles and had lived for a while, and I like to drive around out west, and he did this famous horse trip, of riding a horse back from California. So we really bonded on that, and I have had several wonderful trips with him, just riding around in the wilderness, away from the interstate, and away from paved roads, for that matter. We took a trip one year, and we just stayed on dirt roads all the way across Nevada and Utah, and the roads started being paved when we got to California. But that was just really an incredible trip. And also, there are things out west that you would never think were there. Well, one thing are these dinosaurs and dinosaur parks out in the middle of nowhere. Or on this trip that Fletcher and I took on dirt roads, we met people who were so incredibly eccentric that are living out there in the middle of the desert. And there were also government things out there too. We came upon a big weapons storage place in the middle of Nevada that's not on the map.
Now, if this was a real podcast, we would spin off and do a bunch of investigation and try and figure out what it was that Jeanne and Fletcher ran across in there in the desert, but it's not, so we won't. But now I'm super interested in this, Jeanne. I mean, there's so many things that you're touching on that to me are really great, in that one of the things I love about this project is that it gives other people an idea of what it is for Jeanne to have a full life, And so one of the things I talk to my students about all the time is like the most terrifying thing that I can ask you, aside from to give you all totally open parameters on making an object, I can say like, do whatever you want, take as long as you like, and you can use whatever material you like. The only other question that's more terrifying is, what do you need to make you happy? And you have talked about so many things that you've recognized that you need. You need this travel, you need this time away, to recharge and to replenish. Which kinds of gigs are not good for you. You recognize all of these things that are really important. And to me, that's one of the things that I'm really enjoying about some of the things that you're talking about. But now, before we started talking about your travel, you were talking about going freelance and sort of doing things on your own and how good that was. I would imagine that would be kind of nerve-wracking in that when you're at Malmo, you've got stability. You have a gig. You go in at 9, you leave at 5, whatever, and you know that they're going to be there the next day. But when you're freelance, it's a little more up in the air. It's a little more unpredictable.
It is. It's a leap of faith. I got into therapy, and I quit drinking and went to AA, and that helped tremendously to go to AA. They taught to trust and not try to control everything, and to trust that if I do the right things, and that the outcome will be positive. So that helped tremendously. And also going to AA meetings helped me. You could go verbalize your fear, and there are all these other people in there who are fearful, of what's going to happen. But as long as you are taking care of yourself and not drinking and not having a hangover and things, and also having a clear head, things you turn out in a positive way. So that helped a lot. I did that when I was working at Malmo. A lot of that culture is around drinking. People would be drinking cocktails at their desk. It was a lot like Mad Men.
Right.
That life at the ad agency was so much like Mad Men. The entertaining clients over cocktails, and then having these brainstorming sessions and having cocktails. So there was an awful lot of that in working, and also with all that pressure. So after I quit Malmo, I quit drinking and got that help, that therapy through AA meetings, and that helped tremendously. And but it was very hard. It was hard to collect my money. That was probably the hardest. And being a single freelance person, I was at the bottom of the payment, especially working for corporations. And that was really hard. I was poor, and it was really frustrating to put off my creditors. Well, meanwhile, the people that owed me money were putting me off. So that was just very, very hard. And I ended up getting public art jobs, around the year 2000. The Memphis passed the percentage for art law, and I got one of those early urban art projects, which had a studio down at Pinckney's place, on martial arts, and I made a great big mosaic to go on a trolley stop platform.
That was just down the street.
Yeah. And then now it's that's Orleans Station, and it's a picture of Sun Studio musicians, and also pictures of the old Art Academy people, Burton Calloway, because the Art Academy had started up in Victorian Village. So, and it was, so I worked on that, and that was really hard to do. I became a mosaic artist, and and have you ever done mosaics?
I mean, I know that there's a lot of physicality involved. There's the breaking of the tiles, or the placing of the tiles, and the finding the things to be the colors that you want.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and also after I had, and then piecing all of these tiles together to make a picture, and I was in making these portraits of these people. I was using very small tiles, the size of a fingernail, to make the skin tones and the image. And after doing that for a while, I started to see the whole world in fragmented bits. it was it was really bizarre to do that. And also, I had to cut those tiles with my handheld clipper, and I developed the most incredible hand strength. I could take down a 6 foot tall muscle man with my handshake. It was just bizarre.
Now, before we get into the public works projects, I mean, one of the things I'm interested in is I remember when I first met you. I think you had
That was at Marshall. Yes,
Marshall.
you were there. Yes,
you
we
had
were
the
there
studio
together.
next to mine, and I remember you would be down there first thing in the morning, and you'd be there the whole day, and then you would leave in the afternoon. I mean, it really was like a job, and I remember, to me, that was really that was a great glimpse into the way that some people have their practice. And then also I remember with you had a ton of things that you were doing for some publications or some places here in Memphis. Like I remember you did a ton of things for the Memphis Flyer.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And I remember that was really important because that was sort of a steady gig, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Now, what was it like? Because that was also kind of right when the Flyer first started, right?
Yeah, yeah. I actually did their second cover and worked just doing spot illustrations for them. But I did a lot of covers. But every week I would have to come up with a little illustration for the News of the Weird, which, what lasted for 20 years or so.
Yeah, I mean, that was a regular thing. I mean, when I would sort of talk to people about you, I would say, oh, you probably know Jeanne from this, from News of the Weird, those small illustrations.
Yeah.
Now, talk to me about that regular gig. It's funny, yesterday I was talking to Anthony Lee, P.S. he says, to tell you hello. But he was saying that one of his really early memories was hanging out with his grandmother, and the things that his grandmother would read to him were like Weekly World News and the National Enquirer and all these like totally bonkers it's almost like fantasy news sources. And so part of me was thinking about News of the Weird when we were talking about that. But so talk to me about those News of the Weird drawings.
Well, those were incredible. Again, I was using that illustration style that I had learned at the, at the art museum for incarcerated people. Just this very stylized, strange kind of style, and but reading the News of the Weird really gave me an insight into the news that most people didn't hear about. And a lot of it was the rise of the Taliban in the Middle East. That kind of news was not happening on the front pages of our newspapers at that time. Most people were not aware of the atrocities that were being inflicted, mostly on women in the Middle East. But I would do illustrations about that, about girls that would not be allowed to leave a burning building because they didn't have a burqa on. And they would have to burn. Things like that were happening. I'm sorry that the news of the weird is not like that anymore. It was sold to a corporation, and they aren't. There really isn't anything going on. There are so many weird things going on now, and they aren't reporting them. So that's too bad.
Now, talk to me a little bit about working with the flyer really early on, because I mean that's a part of the creative landscape. I think that's really important in the city, and I don't think I have talked to anybody related to that early on. Talk to me a little bit about I mean, I know you were sort of working from away, not necessarily on the inside, but talk a little bit about the connection with the flyer early on.
Well, for one thing, they had a physical office, which they don't have anymore, and I'd go in there twice a week. And that was also before. I don't think I had a computer then either. So I'd go down there and pick up the physical copy of the stories and then deliver them. And I would walk around and chit-chat with the various people that were there. I think really Jackson Baker is about the only person. Well, there are a couple of other people, I think. Carrie, the art director, is still there, but it was a vibrant place. People were writing stories and, and having a lot of fun, too.
Yeah, I mean, to me, I remember the flyer as being, I mean, it sort of came around, if I remember right, in the early 90s. Is that right?
Uh-huh.
And so I remember that was also kind of the time when I would have been its target audience, sort of like as an early 20s Midtowner, thinking about music and art and politics in that way. Now, when you were doing the covers for them, I'm super curious how, in terms of your autonomy, your ability to sort of be in control. What was that like?
Yeah, well, it was great. I loved doing covers for them. And they gave me a lot of freedom to do whatever style I wanted, and they would give me a kind of a sketchy idea of what they wanted, but they pretty much let me do what I wanted to do. And I was also doing that thing that I really like of inside pages, telling the story and doing the layout and the illustrations, and they were edgy too. The paper has really dumbed down, and that started almost immediately. They were doing I think their first couple of issues, they were talking about some of the Superfund sites that were polluting the city, and then they quit doing anything like that. They got the word from the higher-ups to not be quite that controversial. So, and it's just been it's been a steady progression of being more acceptable, I guess. And also, it's just been so hard because, well, just like all newspapers, we've lost our newspapers, the printing. I remember for a while they had 2 or 3 pages of topless dancing ads. Right. You remember? And meetups. And so they quit having that, but that lost a lot of revenue for them.
Now, I'm curious, are there, because you did so many, you were talking about the covers that you did. I mean, it must be dozens. Are there
Hundreds.
hundreds?
Hundreds.
Are there
20
some,
years,
are there
one a
some
week.
that are there some that stick out where you're like,
Oh, yeah.
that was a good one?
Oh, yeah, I have my favorites, absolutely. One of my favorites is Jesus coming out of the tomb, rising from the dead, and going, and the Mary Magdalene, and they're outside seeing him, and he goes, "Surprise!"
That was on the cover of the flyer?
No, that was
Oh,
that was a News of the Weird illustration.
Okay. I would imagine them maybe taking some heat for that one.
But no, but I love that one. And also, one is that I really like too is a picture of a space alien who's picked up this middle-aged woman, and she's looking pretty happy, and the caption is, "Oh, thank goodness that I have space alien abduction insurance." Well, and then there was a later one that was a man being carried off, and he had, "Thank goodness I have space alien abduction pregnancy insurance." So, and those are true stories. Lloyd's of London will insure you. Now, because I did those illustrations, somebody called me up and told me that their mother was visiting them and she had been abducted by space aliens.
I would imagine you probably got a lot of feedback from those illustrations.
Oh, yes. Well, I had lunch with this woman. She told me all about what it was like to be abducted by space aliens and invited me to come to the Space Alien Convention in
Roswell.
Yes, yeah. yes. And I get their advertisement every year.
Oh my gosh.
Someday I'm going to go.
Now, you were working with the flyer, and then were there other institutions that you were working with, freelance, that were sort of fun, sort of exciting, feeding for you?
Well, I think I did that until, I guess, maybe 2010, but I had other jobs that only paid $300 a month. So, but it was nice to have that kind of security. But that's when I started doing public art and did mosaics on trolley stops, and then did excuse me, and started painting murals at St. Jude Hospital, and there was like a 10-year period where I worked for a mural company that painted murals for Bellevue Baptist Church, St. Jude Hospital, and then also got some jobs designing sculpture for Le Bonheur. I designed a big sculpture in the lobby of Le Bonheur Hospital, and I designed a big sculpture for St. Jude Hospital commemorating their genome project. And with those projects, I made enough money that I could quit doing commercial projects and just do my own artwork. And that was fabulous.
Now, talk to me a little bit. For sure, I want to talk about the things you're thinking about as your own projects. I want to talk about that. But before we do that, talk to me a little bit about, because I mean, making that shift from making those illustrations, the News of the Weird. I mean, those are not. They're like quick, They are small. They come out once a week, so they're sort of common, not disposable by any means. But when you're thinking about making a mural, or when you're thinking about making a mosaic, I mean, you were talking about the Orleans Street stop and how that was 20 years ago. It's still there, still holding up great.
Yeah.
And so there's a kind of permanence to
Oh,
making
yeah.
those things.
Oh, yeah.
Talk to me a little bit about, is that a different kind of headspace for you as a maker?
Oh, yeah, yeah. Well, it's tremendous. I love the idea that I've left my mark on the city. You know, the trolley stops were so hard to do. I I didn't know what I was doing, and
But you did several, right?
yeah, I did too. Well, I was the designer, and my mosaic builder quit in the middle of the project, and I had signed a contract, so I just taught myself how. I read books and had somebody to advise me on making mosaics, and so I did that myself. And out of the blue, this woman called me up who had worked in Los Angeles, uh, uh, and working for movies. And she knew about uh, contracts for, products that go along with the movies, little dolls that go along with, various cartoons, movies. And she wanted to learn how to make mosaics. And she came and helped me and cut the tile. And the tile had to be sanded on all four sides. So there was, every weekend I'd be sanding tile. And then finally, it came time to install the mosaics. And
All right. Okay, so today is Monday, August 18th, and we are redoing the interview with Jeanne Seagle, or redoing the last few minutes of the interview with Jeanne Seagle. And Jeanne was super sweet and let me into the house and the studio. And man, I wish I could let you guys see the studio. Okay, so the place we left off was you were talking about doing the trolley stop, and then you said, and then after we installed it, and then that was when everything slumped.
yeah,
Yeah.
oh God, that was just one of the hardest things that I've ever had to do. This was a bunch of tiles on a two-dimensional mesh surface that was wrapped around a column, and then overnight it just all slid down so that the arm that was supposed to go in the armhole was now down by the person's waist on the column. And I just had to go out there. I spent about 9 months standing on the trolley stop whenever it was over 32 degrees and the wind was less than 12 miles an hour. I could go get on the trolley stop. And meanwhile, the trolleys were running by constantly. It was just a huge feat of endurance. And, but there it is, and the trolleys are not running now. So.
Now, I mean, for me, the really great thing about the trolley stop was that those led to the projects that you did at St. Jude, especially
Yes.
that really massive one at the very front. Will you talk to me a little bit about how you got that
sure.
gig?
Well, the next gig that I got was the statue that's in the lobby of Le Bonheur Hospital.
Oh, right.
And I got that. This was just wonderful karma. I got that as a direct result of people seeing me out on the trolley stop, working away and persevering until it was finished. And the CEO of Le Bonheur Hospital wanted a great big mosaic statue, and she went to two different sculptors. She went to, and they both said that they didn't want to do it and that she should get me to do it. And she did. And so I had this great gig to make a lot of money, and I had a office manager, an experienced office manager who had moved to Memphis from Los Angeles, where she had worked for the movies and knew how to produce. I think her gig had been to produce little toys that go along with cartoon movies. And she knew how to do all of the business end of producing something. You have to get insurance, and you have to get a lawyer, you have to write the contracts, and do all. And she knew how to hire people and teach them how to apply mosaics to and she knew where to get the basis of something to put the mosaics on, which in this case was a great big obelisk, 16 foot tall, and a great big bird. And she took my model, sent it down there. They photographed it and reproduced it, from my size, which you could hold in your hands, to something that was 16 feet tall, and produced that statue in 1 year. And and the CEO of Le Bonheur wept when she saw it.
Oh, that's really beautiful.
Oh, it was. And it's gotten a great response. It cheers people up, and plus Le Bonheur is full of art by all kinds of artists.
Right.
That it's just a wonderful art museum over there. So then, after that was over, I did not know what I was going to do. I was out of a job, and I took a job working this was my last resort. I took a job painting murals at Bellevue Baptist Church, where it turned out I really loved being in this building. Nobody was there while we were painting. I was on part of a painting team, and we had the run of Bellevue Baptist Church Children's Department, which is the size of a large regular church. And we painted for several years. And from the same guy who had that commission had a St. Jude commission. So we went from Bellevue Baptist Church to St. Jude and painted over there. We painted all of the available wall space where patients would be. It was there had been a mural project going on there in the bedroom part of St. Jude, but not any of the other places, the examining rooms or the treatment rooms or the therapy rooms or the school rooms, and that was a lot of real estate. And that being in St. Jude led to me designing a sculpture that was chosen. Several other people were designing sculptures, but they chose mine. And that was, at this time, I had the experience of the Le Bonheur statue, knowing the business end of being a project manager, and I knew what to do. So the person who handles the money is the one who makes the most money. So that was very beneficial. I didn't make a whole lot of money on the Le Bonheur statue. The artist's commission is usually 20% of the total, the total project. But the person who's managing the money can just build in whatever kind of profit that person wants. So I was able to do that. And now there's a totally different atmosphere working at St. Jude than at working at Le Bonheur. I told you the CEO wept when she saw at St. Jude, they have an opposite opinion. They don't want anybody to know that they are actually paying artists. They want all the people that are donating money, to think that all of the art has been donated by the artists. So we were kept a secret. And I never met the CEO. And the only way we knew that we were doing a good job was there were no complaints. No complaints. So we didn't get any complaints. But we didn't get any gratitude either.
That's really strange.
Which was very strange, but we got money.
Right.
So I made enough money with that project, and that took about a year to do also. I hired sculptors, hired 2 different sculptors. One to make the statue was helix, a double helix for their genome research project. Double helix, giant double helix with cute little kids climbing all over it like it's a playground equipment. And that took about a year, 2, and we had to fit into their schedule of when Barlow Thomas was coming to visit.
Nice.
Yeah, so she would come, and we and that kind of affected our sculpture, though, because she came in the winter and we were laying down concrete in the winter, and you cannot lay down concrete when it's below freezing.
Oh, wow.
But because Marlo was coming, we laid it down, and then a little bit later, it cracked.
Oh,
no. And we had to do it all over again. So that was a very high pressure job. But it was lots of fun, and it's also just lots of fun to be at St. Jude. I mean, the corporate people would not show any kind of appreciation, but the parents of the children and the nurses and the ordinary people that work there just loved having us there to make a beautiful atmosphere to work in. It was so dreary before we came along, just white walls,
right?
Nothing on them.
I mean, I would imagine that, you've got, on one hand, the kind of satisfaction that you get when you make your work, and then there's a kind of additional satisfaction when you have these huge projects that are going to be around, hopefully, for a really long time, and how that satisfaction of knowing that it will be there, but then also the target audience for those St. Jude pieces are the patients and the families.
Oh, that's tremendous. That is so satisfying to actually be doing something that is helping people versus just selling art that hangs on somebody's walls.
Right.
Who may like it a lot or they might not. They might just selling work to interior designers whose clients that are going to live with it may not even know anything about art and may not even care.
Right.
But this was so satisfying. I mean, it's soul satisfying. I don't think I could be any happier about a job, and the camaraderie of all the artists that were there, and the experience of being around these people that are just absolute geniuses, and being in this building with this equipment that, they have equipment that can make nuclear bombs, and so, they have dug, you can see St. Jude driving by and seeing these high-rise buildings, but they also go down deep into the ground where they have these nuclear fission machines that can be used for good, or they could be used for ill also. It's just a fascinating place, and also to see all these people from all over the world. A lot of Indians and people from Japan and the Far East are there. They are these scientists. It's full of scientists. They don't have many doctors. It's really more of a research hospital
Mm.
And if a child has to have some kind of a operation, they are sent over to Le Bonheur. There's a big cooperation between Le Bonheur and St. Jude. But it was wonderful to work there. And
Now, was
it,
that? I remember you were saying that that project sort of freed you up. You know, that spate of doing these really big whopper projects sort of freed you up to be able
Yeah.
to work on your own.
Yes.
What you would think of as maybe the work that
Yes.
you're thinking of as your own.
Yes.
Talk to me a little bit about that shift between.
Well, that's tremendous in my happiness. Trying to make a living as a freelance illustrator and going to all these different clients, doing small jobs, and having to go and beg for a check. I was usually at the bottom of the list to be paid for any of the corporations that I worked for. And to have enough money that I didn't have to do that anymore, and I didn't have to take every job that came my way, whether I liked it or not. It's just kills your soul to do commercial artwork when you aren't interested in what you're drawing at all. It's just something for businessmen to make a lot of money, maybe selling products that you don't particularly want to sell. It just really kills your soul to do that. So
Now, how did you? I mean, one of the things I'm thinking about is that, here we are. It's 2024. We're sort of 2025. We're of this age where we can sort of look back on it and sort of think about our lives. And I'm curious how you were able to compartmentalize. Was it one of those things where you were like, okay, this is something that I have to do, and so I'm going to do this, and then there's this other stuff that's sort of about love, because I think one of the things that I'm thinking about with this project too is my students, and how my students who are really interested in some of the same things that you're interested in, how they will be able to build a life where they're able to pay the bills and have dental insurance and all that stuff,
Yeah.
and then also be able to make the things that they want to make. How were you able to compartmentalize that? How were you able to hold both ideas in your head at the same time and stay sane and normal?
I wouldn't say I was sane.
Right.
I was not sane. I drank a lot. There was so much pressure. And but the way I kept my sanity was to go on these trips to visit my aunties in Colorado and do plein air painting while I was traveling. That, and also coming back and making my own paintings. Not a lot, but often. And every now and then I'd have jobs that I really liked. I really enjoyed doing illustrations for Memphis Magazine and Flyer and doing that kind of work. It was just the strictly commercial jobs that just killed me. But I'm so much happier now. I would have to envision myself being chained to my desk with a leg chain, ankle, and I'd have to do all this stuff to psych myself up to work. I just was not happy doing that kind of work, and now I like what I do. It's fun. I like what I'm doing. It's a tremendous change in my life.
Now, one thing I'm also thinking about is, the pieces that you were making before when you would go out west and visit with your aunties, and you would, that landscape is so postcard gorgeous,
Yeah.
you just sort of see it and you're just like, whoa. And
Yeah.
then one of the things I notice about your work now is that it feels much more local. In the way that it maybe isn't necessarily extraordinary, it's not a postcard kind of thing, but the way you experience that space as an artist and as a maker there's all this like love and affection and time and observation, and you can really sort of see where you have this a kind of intimacy with those spaces that one maybe doesn't normally see in landscape drawing or painting. Where do you think that comes from? How did you make that transition from that super gorgeous lush space to what we would think of as like the stuff that we would pass on the way to the grocery store?
Well, it was hard. I struggled to find local landscape that I wanted to uh, make art out of. I was used to the beauty of out west, all the colors, and you can stand in one spot and just turn around, and there, every direction you face is something beautiful to draw or paint. Here, it's not like that. It's more of a struggle to find something, but I adore going for rides in the country. I love going across the river, and I see, every time I go, I see something that is just beautiful that I want to reproduce. Uh, you know, Now it's the problem here is we just have two colors. We have black and white, and we have green. That's about it. So making drawings is black and white drawings is a good way to render this. A lot of my color work, colored landscapes. There are a lot of people making colored landscapes, and uh, a lot of them are really trite. And the challenge is to find uh, the composition of the work to make it different from a regular postcard sort of composition. And I think that's, one thing that I really try to do is to have a different kind of composition. And I like the panoramic format. That's a little bit different. And I love lines too. I love in the winter, the branches of trees. It just fascinates me to look at these lines, and that is conducive to, a pencil line. And a good pencil line is hard to reproduce. You know, uh, you have to do all kinds of things with your line. It's not just one pressure. You have to vary the pressure and vary the stroke, and so many things can go into a line, and that's what I do in my landscape drawings. I was doing drawings with oil pastel and of the landscape, and I had a show coming up and didn't have enough pictures, and I just thought it would be easier if I just put black and white pictures. I would draw the black and white drawing and put oil pastels on top of that, and I was really liking just the black and white drawing. So I tried that with a show that I had at Gallery 56, a little gallery on Central Avenue, and I got such a huge response for the black and white drawings. Everybody complimented me on the black and white drawings, and kind of ignored the colored oil pastel drawings. So I just started. I thought, well, I'll just do this black and white stuff, and I love it too. It's very time consuming. It takes me probably a month to just come up with the composition. I was saying the composition has to be special, and I just I'm going to spend a month or more actually drawing this, and it has to be really good composition to hold my interest and make me want to spend that much time with it. So, I do take a lot of photographs, but then I cut them up and rearrange them and crop them and to get the composition that I want, and then it takes another month of just drawing intensely. It's, I think I have probably given myself arthritis by drawing and just with bearing down with my pencil, and but I love these drawings, and I do the things that when I'm thrilled by the landscape, which when I go across the river to the floodplain, which is my subject matter, and there is fog or mist or changing colors or any number of things that are going on in nature, I am just totally blown away. I'm so exhilarated by being out in nature, and I think right now in our age when nature is at great risk, it's meaningful for me to be making pictures that are about nature and just the nature that we have around us. Some of my early pictures would incorporate plastic bags that were in the landscape, or telephone lines or smokestacks in the distance, and I think I'm maybe making a statement about what's happening to our environment. I was just over there this weekend, and I have taken this road that goes right around Dacus Lake. That's the first exit off the interstate. When I first started going over there, Fletcher, my boyfriend, lived over there. I would drive over there to see him on Friday nights, and I just loved this little trip out of town to go visit him, and to drive around in these fields. And at that time, the roads were not paved; they were just dirt roads. There was a bait shop where there was a couple of people that ran the bait shops, just good country type, a little woman who's about 5 feet tall who could handle a shotgun and would go out, and if there was a mad dog hanging around, she'd shoot it. And her great big husband, who drove a big rig, was there, and those were Fletcher's neighbors, and that's where he got his phone calls, up at the bait shop. And I just loved, I guess maybe this goes back to my childhood, in Arkansas, and knowing the local people, and it might go back to that, reliving that sort of thing. But I've watched it change. Now the roads are paved. It's a bike trail. It's a big river crossing.
Right.
And now you see guys on fancy Italian bicycles and cute little multicolored, skin-tight little outfits riding around over there. It's changed a lot.
Right.
But it's still gorgeous. I still love to go over there.
I mean, for me, the thing that I love about those drawings is they are about that change, but they're also kind of about that timelessness, I mean, in terms of the change, there's a deep, intimate connection between you and that space.
Yeah.
And then also the power or the beauty or the feeding that being in that space gives you, that exchange of emotion or affection is present. And so for me, that's how I enter those spaces. I mean, thinking about that kind of affection and that kind of investment and intimacy that you have with that landscape.
Yeah. Well, I do have an intimacy with it. I notice when a tree falls down, or a major limb on a tree falls and changes the shape of the tree. I have some spots that I draw over and over again. And I think, human beings need to be in nature. And we people that live in the city have forgotten that. The people that I meet that live over there, the idea of going to Memphis is just horrible. They can't stand the thought of going into the city and being in Memphis. Um, and that's understandable. We have lost so much of our I don't know the right word for it, our appreciation of our lives. We wouldn't be polluting like we are now if the powers that be had ever spent any time on the land.
Right.
All they would not want to harm our land like they are doing.
Mm-hmm. Now, what are you working on in the studio now? If I remember right, you have a drawing and a show at the Drawing Center.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm very excited about that. At the end of September is a fundraising auction at the Drawing Center in Soho, in New York. And, oh, wow. There's a woman that works there who is from Memphis, and she asked me to be in this show. Oh, and there are going to be people like Helen Frankenthaler in the show, Albers, just all kinds of really famous people that their work is being donated, and then also, emerging artists like me. I'm an emerging artist in this venue, so I'm just so excited about that. That's coming up in about a month and a half.
Okay.
So I've been working on that. I've had to get a passport because for the plane, get the plane tickets and the hotels and all of that kind of stuff. It's really I have to go buy an outfit. That's probably that's gonna be the hardest. That's gonna be the hardest thing to do. I like to wear my work clothes, so.
That's funny. Sometimes Melissa Dunn will sometimes ask me, "What are you gonna wear?" Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, that's a good question.
I need a good arty looking art opening outfit.
Right.
So, Pinkney's going to be in this show too.
Oh, good.
So
all of the Memphis Venn diagram overlaps.
Yeah, and also so many of the children of my friends live in Manhattan or close in Brooklyn. So maybe I hope these kids will come to this show, and I won't. But I'm just so excited. I've always wanted to go to an art opening reception in New York, and here it is. Have you ever been to an art opening?
No, I mean, once, but it was a long time ago. Yeah. That's super
and especially awesome. At the Drawing Center in Soho.
Yeah, that's a massive space.
Soho is like such high dollar inhabitants. So maybe there'll be movie stars. Maybe I'll be discovered. What do you think?
That's a perfect place to end. Thank you, Jeanne, for letting me come to the house. And that was the second of 2 interviews that I recorded with Jeanne Seagle. The first part of it was recorded on August 8th in the Memphis Listening Lab. And then the second part with the audio that was obviously recorded on an iPhone was recorded on August 18th. We hope you enjoyed the interview. Please join us next week when we release another interview. Until then, thank you for listening.